Good.
I think maybe we are live now. I see
Maybe it seems we're live now.
I see the red light of joy here.
Yeah. But on YouTube, it seems like it's still waiting for us. So not sure what's happening here. Let me check.
Yeah, no worries. I also just lost your audio.
Okay, so everyone, so sorry about that. I think we have been talking alone for the last 4 minutes because I stupidly forgot to push go live, and I just put the countdown, and we're talking about live and how good it was. So welcome everybody. So I'm going to repeat a little bit myself. Super excited to be here for this new Kubefirst Live. I have Rick Sherman with me from Datadog. Thanks for joining us. How is life, Rick?
Life is good. We're gearing up for our user summit right now. So lots of work happening there. Lots of talk with customers and partners and all that good stuff. And getting ready to go camping for the weekend. So it's a nice wrap up for a weird holiday week here in the United States.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty good. We have great weather here. I'm not going to talk 4 minutes about my AC like we've done before we go live, but I have my new AC coming in on Monday. I still need to share this live. I'm excited about it. I was waiting for that because my AC is dead for like the last month, and the weather is pretty hot and humid right now. So it's about like 30 Celsius in my office here, which is about, I don't speak that much Fahrenheit. I think it's about 80 or 80 something Fahrenheit, which is like really hot. So like if you see me sweating during the live stream, it's probably because Rick is sharing really hot content, but at the same time, it's because it's really hot in my office. So super excited today. We're going to talk about Datadog. We're going to talk about observability. We're going to learn a little more about like how to, get more information about your Kubernetes cluster. And it's a special live stream for us for two things. The first one is we're a huge fan of Datadog at Kubefirst. We use it to track our own metrics internally about the Kubefirst installation, what's went well, what didn't go well, what we could improve, what's the user experience. So really useful for us. And by the way, you see right now, I'm the only pretty face from Kubefirst here. John is with me usually, but unfortunately or fortunately, John is on vacation, which means that like the live stream may be a little bit shorter than usual, but at the same time, I know John and Jared, who is not joining all the time the live stream anymore, is also a huge fan of Datadog, and he's also on vacation, and both were a little bit sad to miss that live stream. So hopefully they're not watching it right now. You're getting off, you're not working, you can watch the recording after. Again, and it's pretty good because I use Datadog a little bit, but I'm not like a power user. I didn't have the chance in the past to use it that much. So this is the other reason why I'm also really looking forward to what Rick's going to share with us, because there's going to be mostly new content from me. So, hey, just want to say hi to Alec. Thanks for joining us. And also hi to Mfun Udo. Really nice for you to join us live today and just say hi. We always like those messages. As a reminder, if you have any question during the live stream, you can ask them in the chat in the platform you're looking for. We're going to receive it. We're going to try to answer those. Or if you don't have any question, you can just say hi. Always exciting to get some great comments for people. So, Alec, again, great to be here. Excited for you to be here. Excited to have you here. Hopefully, there's going to be interesting content for you. I'm pretty sure it's going to be. So, on that note, I stopped talking and I'm giving the mic to Rick, who really, Rick, sell us Datadog for the people that may not know the platform. At least you probably heard about Datadog. You may not have used it in the past. So, fire away.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction there. And so I'm going to start a little bit with a few slides. I promise I'm not going to like PowerPoint anybody to their grave here. But to Fred's point, not everyone may be familiar with Datadog, or you may have been familiar with Datadog of years past. And things have changed quite a bit as we continue to evolve the platform. So I just want to spend a little bit of time introducing who we are, assuming my click button works. Hey, there we go. So at a high level, Datadog is a monitoring and analytics platform. And so our goal here is to provide full visibility across your entire organization. And so that's going to span literally end to end. So from your infrastructure, network, application, services, all the way out to your end users. And so our goal is to really enable everyone. So it'd be that people that are ops, devs, security, even some of those business folks, so that they all can have a shared understanding of how your systems and your applications and everything in your business looks from a technology perspective. And so really our goal is to solve really complex visibility problems. And so the way that we do that is through our integrations. And so we spend a lot of time and effort building integrations for all the different types of technologies that our customers use. So that way you can get started with Datadog immediately out of the box and get a lot of insights with it with very minimal lift. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But I kind of want to talk about observability as a journey. Folks that are maybe newer to the industry or have been in the industry for a while. Observability, if you look at like the DevOps infinity thing, is there, but not everybody gets to that path right away. And so I want to highlight some of the fundamental pieces of observability. And so most of our customers are going to start with infrastructure monitoring. And that's really the foundation of pretty much everything we do, right? So that's your compute and your networking. And that's really where you have a lot of tangible set of metrics. So things like CPU or memory, disk, right? Those are things that everyone can kind of grasp onto very quickly. And then most of our customers will, once they get infrastructure monitoring in place, start collecting logs, because quite frankly, pretty much everything under the sun is going to emit some sort of a log, right? Your servers, your applications, your cloud providers, so being able to centralize those logs, parse them, correlate them is really important to understand the overall scope of things. Now, the third piece of our journey here is going to be application performance. And this is really once we've got the infrastructure well understood, let's understand what are the applications that this infrastructure is servicing. And so your application still might be a monolith. I imagine most folks here are going to be, distributed microservices, Kubernetes, or maybe potentially serverless as well. And so, being able to understand how the flow of information is going through all of these different services and all these different components allows you to really understand how an application is actually working, not just one piece of it. And then the last little bit I'm going to mention here is the user experience. And so this might be your end users that are hitting your website, using a mobile app, or really maybe just consuming an API, right? Our users are sometimes external or internal, right? We're building this stuff for somebody. And so I want to spend just a little bit of time kind of diving deep in a couple of these pieces. This is really just going to kind of set me up for a little bit of demo here later. And so if we look at infrastructure, it has been an evolution, right? Things have been continuously evolving. And you may or may not still be running actual physical servers. You might be fully cloud native, somewhere kind of in between, right? So being able to understand your infrastructure as a whole, regardless of type or where it's deployed, is really important. And so, I mentioned those things like CPU and memory and all of these things. That's really great to collect. But within Datadog, we really be able to understand abstractions. And so we can do things like grouping on physical things like instance type, but even more abstract things like grouping your infrastructure by an application or the team that owns it. So that way, the folks that are responsible for it can operate that a little bit more confidently. And this kind of continues on through multiple pieces of the platform. And so we apply that same type of abstraction and grouping and understanding for containers themselves, right? Because as you're adopting containers, your footprint continues to grow, right? So a single application, could now be like thousands of containers, right? Across hundreds of hosts. And so being able to understand those is really, really important. That's pretty much everything. I'm going to keep saying it's important. And then, as I mentioned, your applications might not even be hosted on a server or a server technology at all, right? And so as folks are continuing to adopt serverless, commingling it with, distributed services and microservices, it's really important to understand how they're coming into play and performing with one another. And even though you're not necessarily responsible for managing things like a server, you still have to right size your serverless applications, right? You still need to know how much memory and how much concurrency. You need to avoid things like cold starts and timeouts and all of these serverless centric things. So Datadog is quite a bit in those infrastructure pieces. And so I mentioned that once you have this understanding of infrastructure, most folks will then look at their applications. And again, distributed services, tons of containers, tons of microservices. So being able to understand how information is flowing through all of those is going to allow you to really diagnose either troubles or build optimizations, really focus on what you can take your application into. And so application performance monitoring can kind of take several forms. So things like the rate and the duration of a request, what are the upstream and downstream dependencies of these different services? Are you getting stack traces? How are the runtimes performing? There's lots of different kind of pieces of knowledge here. And then there are the operational pieces of knowledge as well, right? So when was your last deployment for this service, right? How is this actually functioning version over version? Did you introduce some sort of new issue? Did you bring back some sort of a regression? Are you actually doing blue-green or canary deployments? So having that kind of information allows you to be a little bit more pragmatic about your deployments. And then when you start to tie all that in together with those logs and that infrastructure, you can actually start understanding where issues or where opportunities really lie. And so the last little part here, I mentioned, those users, right? I think everybody here has been to, a website or used an app that just isn't very good, right? And it's frustrating. And so being able to capture what your users are seeing, how your application is performing for them, as opposed to just, it works on my machine, is really how you start to ensure that the user experience is what you want it to be. And so, when we combine all of these pieces together, for us, that's where the magic happens, right? Because now you have the system as a whole, and then you can dive into any piece of it without losing context of all the other components. Because a user might come to you and say, this application is really, really slow, but the source of that slowness could be very deep inside of your system, right? It's something that they would never actually see. So being able to really zero in, on that piece of information is going to allow you to operate your system much more elegantly. And so diving a little bit deeper into the Kubernetes portion of this, that was kind of like the high level. Here's who we are. Now, how does this apply to Kubernetes specifically? And so when you look at Kubernetes, there's kind of two major components here that you may want to monitor, right? So your control plane, how is my control plane functioning? Are there issues that I need to be aware of, events, kind of what's happening there? And then the worker nodes themselves. And so that's the underlying hosts, but then also those workloads that you're pushing out to them. So again, both pieces of that puzzle. And the way that we do that is generally with our agents. And so we've got a couple different agent types that apply within Kubernetes. And this is maybe a little bit of a deeper dive. So if you're already familiar with Datadog, this might resonate. If you're brand new to it, hopefully you latch onto a piece or two of it here. But so we deploy agents to all of the nodes. And so that's actually how we're going to track information about how those nodes are performing. So like your host and OS metrics, as well as being a receiver for applications to send us traces, as well as things like networking information and any sort of security issues. There's a lot of built-on things that we can do with having an agent on your worker nodes. And so we are true to the Kubernetes form here. So we actually can configure and deploy that through our YAML definition files. And so we're actually able to auto-discover tags through these pod annotations and use that to configure and manipulate some of those things. I'm not sure if Fred might show some of that. I'm not 100%. I haven't seen his demo in advance. So we're all learning together here collectively. But on its own, if we have a node agent on every single worker, that would be a lot of API requests going back up to the control plane to get information relative to its configuration and those types of things. And so we also have a cluster agent, and that's what we would actually deploy to alleviate some of that heavy communication to our API server. But that also unlocks a lot of additional capabilities for us, right? So we can have RBAC rules to make sure that those node agents aren't able to access certain things on the API server, right? So the cluster agent is authoritative there. It also provides cluster level metadata that only was be available in the API server so that the node agents are able to enrich the data and have that full context. And then this also allows you to do horizontal pod autoscaling, or HPA, so that you can actually use metrics out of Datadog for your HPA versus just some of the things that are available in Kubernetes. So that really expands out the feature set there. And then the last little bit, which is fairly new, I don't remember when it actually came out, is that the cluster agent also acts as an emission controller. And so one of the things that we can do now is you've deployed your applications in Kubernetes, you've built out all of these different containers, but you want to start tracing them, right? You want to get that application performance monitoring. We're actually able to inject tracing into that Kubernetes cluster without modifying your container. So we have several different application runtimes that we can automatically inject tracing into. And so we can use the emission controller in the cluster agent to configure that and set that all up. And I'll try to show that a little bit in the demo. So before I flip that screen, I'll go back and be kind and see if we had any comments or questions here before I jumped into something else.
We're good. No questions so far, but like folks, if you have any, feel free to ask them in the chat, and Rick is going to try to answer them.
Yeah, I watch a lot of Twitch, so I gotta try to remind myself that there's a live audience and go back. I don't see any channel points or anything. We're not eating hot jelly beans or anything if you have enough points, but I still recommend that the tech streams adapt to some of the video game streams because it's pretty entertaining.
I agree.
Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into a couple pieces here within Datadog. I'm going to try to keep it relatively high level and just kind of highlight a couple of the bits and pieces. And then we'll drill down and get a little bit more specific or a little bit more low level kind of as we go on. So this is our demo org. Everything in here is fictitious. We have a lot of break fix types of things in here, a lot of performance types of things in here, just so that it is a compelling and interesting demo. It's not indicative of anybody else's platform, customer, blah, blah, blah.
So Hemfun is saying it's amazing. And by doing so, I just realized that StreamYard does not manage emoji. To translate them in the text version. But I actually now I'm curious, what is the wash and emoji? Because I'm like, wash hands.
Yeah.
Like it's just so clean. Like you did a great job. I think that's it. And we also have Alec. There are like two of your super active. Thanks for your comment. Everything makes sense. You know what? Like you've used to give talks. When you give a talks and people tell you like, you know what? I understood everything or everything makes sense, is because you did a great job. And I agree with both of them. You're doing a great job about telling us a little more about Datadog, and which is pretty good because I know the Datadog agent, but to be honest, I didn't know like all the scopes of like every type of data you could get like within a Kubernetes cluster. So pretty cool. And
yes.
On that note,
yeah, no, it's definitely interesting too. Like the emission controller and some of the injection is relatively new to me. So that's why I said I don't even know when it necessarily came out. It was just relatively new to me, which is not a good barometer anymore. I've been at Datadog for a few years now, and things are so rapid in terms of new products and evolution that it's honestly become very difficult to keep up with. I do my best though, and so I went ahead on my. Okay.
No, I was just going to say those agents, they're like you need to install an additional agent than like the, I don't know, quote unquote standard Datadog agent, or is it like just parameters? Like how can you have like the new or get access to new features?
Yeah, so it depends on the feature. If it is agent based, you may have to update your agent, be the in Kubernetes the node agent or the cluster agent. Some of them might be feature flagged, so it may have actually been an older version. It just hadn't been lit up yet. We generally put that in the notes, whether or not like, hey, here's this feature. To enable this, you need X version of the agent. You need X version of the tracing library, for example. And so we added a lot of things, and there are some beta features as well. So we're getting into like remote configuration and some other stuff that I'll mention. All that's going to be dependent on some of those library versions.
Sounds good. Thanks.
But yeah, so on the left here, I've got my nav bar. I'm going to wind up making this disappear But this is a bit of just an example of the lots of different, kind of components within Datadog. I'm going to focus predominantly everything here on Kubernetes today. So I'm going to open that up, make that bar disappear. I also have my screen font size increased and everything to help folks read at home. So if things look a little bit kind of slid or this and that, it's mostly because it is a disproportionate text size. So, we're focusing on Kubernetes. We're talking about that. So I've got an overview here within Kubernetes, and this gives me just kind of high level at a glance information about everything that I have in this account. I can scope this out by things like clusters or namespaces and kind of pare that down. But really the goal here is that you have quick at a glance information about what your Kubernetes state is within your organization. So very top, towards the top here, we've got things like troubleshooting. So, do I have pods that are, having a problem? Do I have unavailable replicas? So on and so forth. We have a series of dashboards that kind of come out of the box that are related to Kubernetes. And then we also suggest monitors. So you can proactively check the state of things within Kubernetes. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump and just show a couple of the out of the box things here. So I'm just going to open up a couple dashboards here. Again, and we're not going to spend too much time on that piece. But this is a Datadog dashboard. So we collect all those metrics, all those logs, and just all this bits of information, and then you can take action on it, right? So in this case, we're visualizing that set of information. And so things like events that are coming from our control side, how our pods are looking, how the resources are looking. And so, this is that information in, an at a glance type of view. Pretty common. Most folks, when they get into steady state, they're either waiting for a monitor to trigger or they're looking at things like dashboards. And so that was Kubernetes as a whole. This is just scoped to pods. And then we can actually see, I think in my demo environment, I've got a ton of stuff in here. So like, I've got almost 7,000 pods in here. So within Datadog and dashboards, you can actually start to scope things, as I mentioned. So those dashboards can be scoped. So in this case, I only want to look at this particular cluster. And so now all of this set of information is scoped only to that cluster. So again, at a glance information, kind of traditional dashboardy stuff that you're probably already familiar with. And so I want to go a little bit deeper into the Kubernetes deployments that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Explorer. And off the gate here, we can actually see that we have some Watchdog insights. So within Datadog, we've had a machine learning function called Watchdog for several years. I think it was like 2018. And so this is how we're actually detecting what I would say is unknowns, right? So we're looking for anomalies within the system as a whole. And so I didn't necessarily look at this in advance. I don't actually, know what these clusters are, but I can see that, for example, Watchdog has detected that there's a lot of unready addresses for endpoints. And so we have a graph here that kind of shows us what our historical trend has been, and we can see this huge spike, right? So we have all this information that we're collecting, and so we're looking for anomalies. So here we're actually saying this might be the way to address this. Again, I'm not necessarily familiar with this, but I can see that there were some monitors set up that did fire related to this. And then I can see what pods are being affected by this thing. So, again, looks like some crash loops. I could click onto that and then look at the logs for that. And maybe that will tell me what's going on there. So application run failed. Looks like there's some sort of exception somewhere. So again, I'm not a Java person. I don't know this application, but I got pretty quickly to, what might be a root cause. And so,
and this is one thing I really like with Datadog is that there is so much data, like not too much because you need that data, but like it's so much data, but like the way you present the information, the way you can drill down, like the filtering, the selection of resources, like everything really, and you can just like go and filter and type stuff that like, and it will find like the information you're looking for, which for me, it's probably like outside of like just gathering all that data. Like it's one thing to gather the data, but like if it's not easily accessible, you just end up with like a pile of data that has no purpose, that you're not going to use. So kudos on I'm a big fan of like the interface and like how you let the user, how you empower the user with that information that you gather.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and it's kind of one of the core tenets within Datadog is we want to be able to keep context as you move around the platform. We're looking at lots of different sets of data, which really are for different types of personas, right? Like you've got maybe your platform engineering team that is responsible for this underlying infrastructure. You've also got your developers. Can they speak the same language, in this type of tool? And that's really, super important to us. And kind of segue on that, part of the way that we do that is through this concept of tags. So pretty much all of the data that comes into Datadog has a series of key value pairs effectively that is associated with that piece of data. And so we use that in our correlation, right? So we can actually see, this particular pod has these tags in it. So I can even see, abstract things like the availability zone and the cloud provider, right? So now I know that this is in GCP. I know what AZ it's in. And there's more and more, kind of pieces of information that might take me somewhere else. And so related to that, I kind of want to poke down a little bit deeper into my Kubernetes environment here. And again, I'm not necessarily an expert in this environment, right? I use this from time to time, but you might also be, responsible for only one part of your deployment, or you've got multiple teams working together. So being able to get information that is related to things is really beneficial. And so I can't see anything here because I have my filter here. Here we go. I'll look at the east here. And so I'm actually going to start with the cluster view here, but here in this view, because that's just kind of where my brain goes. And so we kind of saw this a second ago, but I want to kind of talk about this a little bit. So I'm looking at my Kubernetes clusters. I picked one in particular. At the top, we have a lot of at-a-glance information about it. All right, so I can actually kind of see the size and the scope of it. We also here put our security findings up towards the very, very top. I'm not a security expert. I'm not going to really go into that too much, but there's lots of different components within Datadog that are also looking for vulnerabilities or misconfigured things. And so in this instance, I can actually see within this cluster that I do have some CIS benchmarks that we may want to address, right? And this actually gives me that information. I can see, for example, which rule is being failed against which resources. So again, I'm not a security person, so I won't bore you too much there. But then we've also got
that sounds interesting output though. Because like even if you're not a security person, like from what I saw, the information is pretty straightforward. So like maybe like a Google search about like, hey, why should that be read only? And like you may even find how to do it. So I guess that like a security expert can probably like drill down a little more and like, or know exactly what to do or understand exactly what those things are. But I'm not a security expert too, but like I still really love that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, we even save you the Google search. So we actually do put the rule information inside of it, as well as the impacted resources. And then depending on where it's at in the security product, sometimes you can take action now as well. I definitely will probably not show that because I don't think I know where to look to set that up off the top of my hand. Normally I build my own demos, and this one I'm using somebody else's. So, I'm working somebody else's sandbox this week. But yeah, so yeah, within that like kind of at a glance thing too, I mentioned things that are related. So with this cluster, I can actually drill into all of the different Kubernetes components here that matter to me. But then I want to go ahead and highlight the individual tabs down here as well. I'm going to scroll this up, make it a little bit easier for everybody to see. So again, we're correlating all this information from tags. We're pulling all this stuff in. So I have all the logs that are being emitted from anything within this cluster, right? The physical hosts, the applications, the containers, Kubernetes itself, all of these logs are here, scoped to this thing. Same thing with my application performance monitoring. All of my traces that are relative to this cluster are here. We're going to get a little bit deeper into APM, time permitting. Then we have metrics that are related to this cluster. So if I were to look at this at a different level, these metrics would be related to that individual level. We also do process monitoring if you've enabled that, so we can actually see how are the processes that are running in the containers, what are the processes that are running on the hosts themselves. So again, you might be looking for things that are running away or not quite behaving. And then I think, Fred, you mentioned that you weren't aware. So things like network performance monitoring, we can turn on. That's based on the agent. And this actually does eBPF monitoring at the kernel. So we're actually looking for the traffic that's going in and out of these Kubernetes hosts. And we're able to not only just track IP to IP type of network stuff, but we can also look at more abstract groupings. And so I think I can even do that here. I can actually even see network traffic by service, for example, right? So I've got a set of pods that may be running a particular service. In this case, they're communicating with one another. They're also communicating with cloud provided services. So I can actually see that I'm sending a sizable amount of traffic to GCP and using this logging service. So there's lots of those different related pieces of information. And again, if I wanted to jump into the network performance monitoring view, I could use this as a jumping off point. And then the last little 2 bits here are the events. And these are coming from either the cloud provider, for example, or your Kubernetes control plane, all of the different things that are relative to that. And then those security findings here as well, if you just want to look at them in a tab versus going somewhere else. And so I focused on the cluster. I actually now want to go ahead and look a little bit at the deployment itself, because there's one thing I want to kind of highlight here. And that is the YAML configuration. And I think maybe Fred might talk a little bit about that when you deploy things with Kubefirst. But for me, I really like understanding how is this Kubernetes thing configured, right? And how is that configuration changed? And so I've got here the YAML view of this particular deployment. I can actually now compare this against previous versions of the deployment. And so within Datadog, I can now go see that we updated the version tag of this application. And then probably somewhere down here, we might have updated the Git SHA and the container image, right? And so we do keep history here. We can actually go back in time, deployment over deployment, and see what has changed, what was configured, what may have been the source of whatever thing I'm trying to figure out. And then additionally, we've got the related resource view. So now I can actually look to see how that deployment impacts upstream and downstream, right? So it is part of this cluster in that namespace, has these replica sets. That replica set has these pods. These pods have those containers. And so I can dive deeper and deeper into these different levels without necessarily losing the context. So if I wanted to see the YAML for that pod, I've got the YAML for that pod. If I want to see the metrics related to the pod, I can see the metrics related to the pod. And so that's kind of the continuously diving deeper and deeper into the different pieces. I want to take a moment to kind of pause there to see if we kind of have some questions on that, or we want to riff on a little bit on some of that, because it's kind of a high level like flyby on this stuff, and I don't want to boil the ocean.
No, actually, that's pretty good. Like that was a goal of today. Kind of like quickly showcasing high level the things you can do, because there is a lot of things you can do with the Datadog. So I think it's great that you're showcasing like what's the most important, like people need to know right away to get starting with Datadog on their Kubernetes cluster. No other question for now. Not for me also. Again, I think I'm just gonna repeat amazing wash and wash and wash and I mean, like I think now that's pretty great. Great demo. Thanks for doing that.
No worries. And then if we have time, I'll show a little bit of application performance monitoring, but I know you wanted to show some things as well, and I don't want to capitalize all of your time.
No, like if you want to, depending on how much time, like we try to keep the live stream not too long. My demo is going to take like basically 2 minutes. So if you want to take another 2 to 5 minutes, it's really up to you. I think that's probably going to be quite interesting to monitor that, because it's something that like, especially, I don't know for you, but like, especially since we started to move things to Kubernetes, it feels like we watch a little less like the performance of things, because like it's easier to scale. we usually use a little more reserves. I don't know, maybe it's just me doing a bad job, but I felt like it's a kind of like deploy, quote unquote, and forget. But it's still super important to measure those because especially with the cloud these days, and if you have like a medium to big size deployment, cloud is not cheap. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, lots of folks are talking about cloud costs and things like that, and that's another component of Datadog. But even simple things like how many resources you request when you're deploying in Kubernetes. We did some studies internally based on anonymized data and all that folks are doing a very poor job about picking how much resource they actually need. They're oversubscribing from that standpoint, and they're losing a lot of efficiency. So, to your point, having a continuous view on it helps you kind of right size so that you're using your infrastructure efficiently. So I'll go ahead and just very quickly jump into application performance monitoring. And so I just grabbed a random trace here out of that view to save me some time. I'll close out of this and filter this out just a little bit. So again, we got these tags. So I actually want to look at any application performance traces that are coming from my entire cluster. And so I will literally just grab a random one. And so in application performance monitoring, I'll open the full page. This is actually how we're tracing the flow of information through all of these services that you are deploying, right? So you're deploying Kubernetes, you're pushing out tons of microservices. How in the world do those work together, right? And so this is how we visualize the flow of information through all of those different components. I don't know how this is built, so I can look at a map view, and I can actually now see what are my components and how are they interacting with one another. And I could jump directly into any of these individual components. And then down towards the bottom, we also have information about each one of those requests. So in this case, this was my web store request that came in. It looks like it actually had an error. It came from calling this particular API. This is the infrastructure that serviced that particular portion of the request, all the way down to the physical host metrics of that thing. Any logs that related from all of the different components, right? So we're looking at all these different microservices. What are those logs that related to that one trace? And even new stuff here as well, like what are the SQL queries that were executed on these different microservices, right? So we've got all these different services, maybe they're talking to different databases, et cetera, et cetera. Now you can actually get a little bit more insight into what those were. So maybe your database is slow. That select star perhaps was the wrong choice. So quick overview on that. Again, I know we've got some questions and some time. I see that Alex says the flame graph looks dope. I also agree that the flame graph looks dope. And it's nice too, because we can scroll in and out and really start diving deep. So I can see that, there's Django middleware went all the way down to an HTTP request. I can get some information about that HTTP request. So I can actually see the destination, what URL it called, some of the options that passed it. I don't know if it doesn't give any response. But yeah, so we can actually start diving deep into all these different components of the software stack, regardless of where that was deployed within it, right? We're tracking it all the way through.
And do you have the information a little bit how it's working behind the hood? Because now I see like, okay, it's about like calling an API, but like you were at the software level. So is there some, I don't know, monkey patching done so you gather like the information from the application itself? Or
so it depends on the application runtime. A lot of them we can do auto injection for tracing. So like Python, I know, Node, I think Java. I forget which ones. Basically, we can change the invocation of them to add tracing to the runtime that they're in. Some things we do have to explicitly add tracing to. So if you wanted to do C++, for example, you got to define where your spans and traces and all that start and end, because we can't automatically do that. And then we are actually able in a Kubernetes world to do that injection at the Kubernetes level. So we can actually go in and say, I wanted to add tracing, we'll even say manually. So if I wanted to add tracing to Python, this will actually give me, here's the instructions on what you need to make sure for the agent. And then here are the things we can customize. So if I wanted to add this to my mission controller and logs injection, it tells me what I need to do for that. And then in some accounts here, we do have remote instrumentation that is coming. And so this is a beta feature. It's still in private beta, but you can actually say, like, of these 3 runtimes, I want to take a Python application in this cluster against, and I don't know which one of these is Python, I'm just guessing. But then I can actually click through, and with the admission controller on the cluster agent, we will modify the Kubernetes configuration and inject the tracing for you automatically so that you don't actually have to make any changes manually. And so if I were to click through and hit deploy, it would update that deployment, do a rolling update, and now we start tracing what our application is that I specified.
I'm impressed, and I like the fact that like there's a way to kind of like automate the process, but there's also a way to you explain how to do this manually, which I'm a big fan of, because at Kubefirst we focus on like GitOps principle, and like everything should be defined like in your source of truth, that is your Git repository. So we try to avoid as much as possible to put things that are on cluster that are not in your source of truth, the GitOps repo. So like having a way to like, and even lazy me just love it, because this is within Datadog, but like, hey, this is what you need to have in the YAML file to make it happen. So I need to say I'm really impressed about that specific feature. Really happy I gave you the time to talk about it, because it's really exciting. By the way, Alex said he has a few questions. Wait, save them to the end. Please ask away, because the end is not too far, Alex. I want to be sure you have the time. But if for whatever reasons, or even if you watch the recording, or you don't want to ask your question live, feel free to write them in comment after the show. We're going to see them, or go on their Slack community, and we are going to be able to answer your question. Probably John and Jared will have a pretty good idea to answer any data question, not me. But like, if we don't know the answer, we have now Rick as a pretty good contact that's going to be able to give us the right information to help you. With that said, like, is there anything else you wanted to show?
No, from the platform itself, again, I still had more content than I could possibly show in the time frame. So my live stream aspirations are still greater than my ability to talk fast. But I've got some questions, it looks like, from Alex. That's exciting.
Yeah,
I don't know if we want to do those now, or...
Actually, I'm going to give you, like, you're talking for the last 40 minutes. So let me quickly show how you can install the Datadog agent on our Kubefirst cluster. And after that, we can move to Alex's question.
Perfect.
So,
I can drink some water. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a small break. I'm like, for me, I was listening and it was like, that's so interesting. Like, it's super clear. So I don't have that much questions. So I did not interrupt you that much, because I was like super clear.
Yeah.
So I'm sharing my screen now. Since version 2.2, we introduced what we call the GitOps catalog. You can think of it, I know some people, my team doesn't like the word, but like has a kind of like quote unquote marketplace. Even if we're not selling anything, it's more like a free marketplace of things you can easily install in your platform. So the screen you're seeing right now is what I see. It's the console application, what I see after I created a Kubernetes cluster using Kubefirst. And you're going to see all my services there, but I have a new tab that is called GitOps Catalog. So GitOps Catalog does not contain too many applications right now. We just released 2.2 last week with the new GitOps Catalog feature. We were so excited about it that we were like, should we wait to release a new version and like have way more application services or to the catalog, or should we just release it with like a minimum number of application and we're going to keep adding to them? So we decided to release without like a ton of application. We just selected some of the tools we like or think that like right away should be useful, but it's really easy for us. We will continue to add things in the GitOps catalog, and on top of that, you can add them yourself. There is the Kubefirst/GitOps dash catalog. This is a repository, really easy to add any application or anything in it, so it appear in the console application for people. So what's the GitOps catalog? Because you're going to tell me like now there's that like new beautiful UI that we released with 2.1, which is another way to create your cluster. So now you can still use the CLI to create your cluster, but now you can launch up the console. So you can go to the CLI and either do Kubefirst launch up, which is going to open a console, which is going to create a key 3D local within Docker, open a console cluster, which is going to give you the opportunity to install, which I'm not showing right now. I created an install new cluster before the live stream because it takes between like 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the cloud provider that you selected. But this is the end result that you will get. So the GitOps catalog right now is only available with the UI installation, because you need that, what we call that cluster 0. That is the console application that lets you create your management cluster. But once you have your management cluster, you're going to see now I have my new Kubernetes clusters. We create 2 repositories on GitHub, or if you choose GitLab on GitLab. We deploy Vault, Argo CD, Argo Workflow, Atlantis Metaphor, which is our application to demo how the cluster is working. But now, as I said, you have that new tab as GitOps catalog. So before I'm starting to use it, let me just show you the GitOps repository, which is your source of truth. If you're not new to Kubefirst, you already know that this is where everything that we created for you is there. So we really go in the declarative way, and we really respect the GitOps principle. So we have the registry folder here. Kubefirst thread is the name of the cluster that I created. Really original, I know. And I have a bunch of YAML file. So Argo CD, use those to deploy applications. So if I go here, I have all my application, and if I try to look for Datadog, it's not there. It does not exist. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go here. I'm going to say that, you know what, I want to install Datadog. And obviously, I forgot to write down my API key. So hopefully we don't check that. Don't verify that. And I think we do. Oh, maybe we don't. Maybe my computer is just like really hot because of temperature. Yeah, I think we do verify. I don't have my Datadog API key right now. It was stupid. So that's a really, really bad demo. Oh, actually, I think it was just a UI issue. So we just released that. So you may still see some like UX or UI issue. But right now, what's happening is that obviously, if it works well, it's not a UI issue in the other way where the add button didn't work, and that message is not good. But what's happening is that when I go back in my repository here, I'm going to see, and it's working. So I just had like a quick UI issue with the add button. Obviously, that's not going to work because I didn't have like the right Datadog API key. But what I see now is that I have a new comment that just happened by the Kibot user, which is a user we create to be able to do those kind of things within the Kubefirst platform. So it just committed a new file to my repository. And if I go back to my registry here, Kubefirst thread, and I look here, I now have a new file called Datadog agent, and it's really, basic. We are just deploying the Datadog agent. So it's basic YAML file that we took from the GitOps catalog. So everything we discussed before about like flags that need to be added, or like specific agents version that needs to be added right now, like you may want to modify that. The good thing is that when you click on the console application to quote unquote install Datadog, because we're a GitOps shop, we did not just Helm install. What we did is that we added that YAML file to your GitOps repo, which means that it's yours. So if you want to update the YAML file to like add new features, or make something happen with the Datadog agents, you're good to go. If you want to add like an ingress controller so it's easier to access Datadog, you're good to go. And if I go in our Go CD now and I look for Datadog, it's in progress. So it's deploying. So I wanted to show you that simple thing because we just released that new feature. It's not, it's not the end of the world to go in your GitOps repo and add a YAML file yourself, but we try to, I see this as like a friendly GitOps principle, like respecting the GitOps principle with the mouse. So you go there, it's easier to install in your things in your cluster, but it still respect the GitOps principle. So quite interesting. We just released that. Try it at home. If there is any application, tool, services you want us to add to the GitOps catalog, as I said, right now it's a small catalog, but mostly everybody's on vacation this week and last week, so you're not going to see too many new applications in the catalogs. But really soon we're going to start to add more. So if you want to have a specific application or tool there, let us know on Twitter, LinkedIn, ping me personally, come on our Slack community, ask us there. We're going to be more than happy to have it for you. If you have your own tool, your own application, it's not in the catalog and you want to add it, you can look at the repository to see the information about how to add your application to the catalog. And again, if you need help, if you want us to do it, please let us know. We're going to be more than happy to do that. So again, you can still add your application manually to your GitOps repo as you wish, but you can use the GitOps catalog now, which we think, again, continue to go in the direction where we really want to make people's life easier when it comes to managing your Kubernetes cluster. So pretty excited by that. I mean, like, I'm a command line person. It took me years to finally like accept that YAML was a thing. So now I kind of like enjoy YAML now. I was just working a personal project, and for the first time, my file with some data is a YAML file and not a JSON. So I think like it was a milestone for me. So I think I'm going in the right direction. But still, I think it's pretty cool to have access to that catalog, and like with 1 or 2 clicks, you're being able to have the YAML file deployed for you in a proper way when it comes to GitOps. So you want to try Datadog? That's the way to go. Just be sure you have your API key before you click install, not like me. So on that note, there is Patrick. We're saying greetings. So hi, Patrick. Always happy to see you. And hopefully you didn't have you had all the support you needed this week. If you had any question, as I said, most people were out, but I know Clay is still in the Slack and helping everybody. So on that note, are you ready, Rick? Because Alec was not lying. He had some questions and they are coming. So the first one is, do you have a research suggestion for seeing a live debug walkthrough with Datadog? Datadog clearly checked all the observability checkboxes, but curious if your team has a walkthrough. I don't know why I struggle with that one in English. A walkthrough you record. So any resources about that?
Yeah, I think we probably have something on YouTube. I don't know off the top of my head. I'll punch through to my thank you slide for the link. I could also, I don't know if I can drop it in, but we do have a learning center on Datadog as well, which is learn.datadoghq.com. And that's actually a whole collection of self-guided workshops that actually use Datadog. You can actually will deploy Kubernetes. There's a few different ways of going about that. So the long answer is I'm certain there is some sort of live walkthrough somewhere on YouTube. I don't know immediately off the top of my head where to find it. But then you can also walk through this as well in the self-guided workshops or with the 14-day free trial.
Oh no! I'm sorry about that. I wrote Datadog with a capital D for
That's okay.
whatever reasons. I'm doing this all the time. I don't know where I took that. It's probably because of my time at DigitalOcean, where my pet peeve. I know yours is like the capital D. You told me, and on some slides I put the capital D.
The GitHub repository can't rename them either, so it's capital D. At one point, it was capital D data, capital D dog. I used to work at Puppet for several years, and we were Puppet Labs at the time, and then rebranded to just Puppet, but you can't change your GitHub org anymore. So their GitHub org is still Puppet Labs. So it happens.
I know. I had the same issue with DigitalOcean, where everybody write DigitalOcean like in 2 words, but like it's 1 word with the capital O. So it's probably from where I'm always writing Datadog with a capital D. Yeah. And Alex say Roger, so I assume that was the nice answer. Actually, that was a pretty nice answer. And you know what? Like, if you go in the learning center and you don't find exactly what you're looking for, let us know. We'll probably find something. And like, if that does not exist, I assume you just created new nice content that Rick or someone who's on his team can create. So let's jump to the second question from Halleck. Is there a performance comparison from time to glass and other relevant perf metric? For general SaaS probability, not an important question, but I work in finance, so performance is very important, which I agree.
Yeah, I guess I'm not entirely certain is the question in terms of time to value, like once you start using Datadog to extracting value out of it, or from the stuff that you're monitoring itself, right? Like as you're deploying out your applications, I guess I would ask for a qualifying statement there.
That and just for my own knowledge, it's the first time I heard the expression "time to glass." Uh, like, what does that mean? Do you know?
I was assuming the single pane of glass. Sometimes Datadog is referred to as a single pane of glass. I came from
Oh,
the networking world many years ago and got
mm.
burned on that concept. So I try to say a unified view or something more pithy.
Okay,
Single
makes
pane of
sense.
glass, but
Thanks
that was
for
that's
enlightening.
kind of why I asked for the clarification, just in case I misinterpreted that.
Wonderful. And third question. So it's Alec had 4 questions, and you know what? Like, if you are watching that, you may say like, "Hey, who's that Alex posing asking all those questions?" And I'm like, "No, that's pretty good because you took the time to ask those questions. It's not always easy to ask questions in public like that. So thanks for doing that because that may answer questions from other people." So the third question from Alec is hopefully this isn't too much of a bait, but asking because I've used Grafana and Elastic for Kubernetes, haven't used Datadog or Signas. What do you see as a Datadog advantage over a solution like Signas?
Yeah, I also have not personally used Signas, and it's not too much of a bait. I think it's a fair question. I think I'm not on the sales side; I'm on the advocacy side. Um, I hope that you're doing observability in any capacity, right? And so if you're starting with a very scoped thing like Elastic and Grafana, and you're really honing in on logs and those types of things, so be it. Where Datadog really shines is when you start combining multiple facets of observability into the solution, right? So, um, some of the other things that may be open source or other competing products, they may or may not have the same amount of sources of information. And so it is a bit of a determination that you have to make on your own is, does that level of context make sense for you? And there's also obviously being a SaaS product, we assume a lot of the costs and things like that for storage and things of that nature. If you're rolling your own or using open source, you are the SRE for that platform. You don't have an army of Datadog SREs, managing all that. So it's a trade-off. It's everybody's own personal decision, but I definitely hope that Datadog is easy to use and helps you get going quickly and has enough things in it that excite you. But again, at the end of the day, just observe in any way, right? If we're the best platform for you, then that's fantastic. But not observing is problematic.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I love your view on things. I mean, like if it's the right platform for you, good. If it may not be the right platform for you, good. I mean, and there is no product that can please everyone as good as a product is, and there is so especially since the last I don't know how many years, like the complexity of text like grown so much that like for a platform to be able to answer like every question or issues people have, it's really hard to do. But I think Datadog is doing a great job. So
yeah, I genuinely love the platform too. Like I really actually like using the platform. Like use lots of different pieces of software, and it's not Stockholm syndrome. Like I just genuinely like it.
That's good. And yeah, Alec is just answering. Delegating SRE workload seems like a primary benefit, as you mentioned a little bit. And just to had some details about the previous question, Alec was just asking about the comparison for the metrics as it relate to additional overhead. So great. And the last question that guess who Alec had for us is you mentioned poor allocation with resources. Assuming you're talking about memory allocation for pods and such, do you see admins costing themselves money via cloud egress by spamming metrics to Datadog? Good question.
Yeah, the overhead on the agents and tracing is as minimal as possible. I don't have hard numbers. I think it's single digit, 1% or less type of thing in most cases. I also have not heard of anybody being concerned about the egress costs. You can see that in platform. I think I could probably pull that up in network performance. So I can actually filter out Datadog traffic in some cases, although they have recently updated this view. So yeah, so we can actually see Datadog agent and API traffic. And then maybe I look at that in analytics. So you can track that network traffic as long as you have NPM turned on and those types of things. I don't know if this is representative of an actual deployment since this is all demo data. This could be wildly inaccurate one way or the other. And so don't take that as gospel in terms of what the cost would be, but that the tool is here. And I think, like I mentioned, that the filtering is beautiful. And I agree again. I think, Fred, you mentioned you came from DO. I was at networking companies as well. When we think about network performance monitoring or network, it's generally IP and port to IP and port, as opposed to, these more abstract concepts, right? So like if I wanted to look at, these are auto grouped. So in this case, this is a host talking to an endpoint, but here's a service talking to a service, right? And so I can actually look at the network traffic that's related to that. However many containers that is on however many physical hosts that is now all combined into one place. So I still get that traditional IP and port type of information, but then a ton of other information in terms of like volume and round trip, things that just don't exist in, the network switch, the router, the firewall. They don't have that context of the service in most cases. And then again, it still ties into other things like logs and then different traces, assuming that these things, are monitoring. So I can then pivot right back and forth. So
that's awesome. So you may have missed the comment because you were demoing the view, but like Alec was saying, that filtering view is beautiful, which I agree. As I said before, it's one of the features I really like, being able to easily filter and like just go get the information that you need. And one last comment that was during the time that I was demoing how to use the GitOps catalog, but I missed it. Is Alex, because I need to show that it's just like great stuff about Kubefirst. They love the workflow, incredibly easy to integrate with Datadog. Kubefirst team, absolutely killing it right now. And you know what, Alec? I cannot disagree with you. I think we're killing it. You know what? I joined Kubefirst. I don't know. It's been 8 months, maybe 7 months. So I'm still quote unquote fairly new, but I've seen a product that was super exciting, where we work on stability so much in the recent, like in the couple months after I joined, not that it's related to me, but like what I've seen. And now we're really at a point where like we're adding features to continuing to make life easier for people. So yeah, and really excited about the GitOps catalog. To be honest, at the beginning of the team, I was like, no, we're not going to do ClickOps. And they laughed at it like, Fred, you know us, we're not going to do ClickOps. We're going to make it easy to do GitOps, easier to do GitOps. So super excited about that. Rick, I think we are moving. That was the last question. I think we're moving to the end of the live stream. I know you said it before, there is a conference coming on. So tell us a little more about Dash.
Yeah, so we've got our annual user conference happening August 2nd and 3rd in San Francisco this year. And this is where we get a couple days of all of our community together. We've got, I think, a huge amount of speaking sessions. We've got tons of different workshops, different participatory things for folks to engage in. And so we take our user conference very seriously. We really want to talk about actual true technical things. We really dissuade lots of sales pitches and just kind of marketing stuff. Not that, there's anything wrong with that, but that's not the direction that we really want to take with that. And so highlight there as well, there are lots of different workshops that we have available. I just put a list of here that may or may not be relevant to this audience in here. In particular, there's a couple Kubernetes workshops with varying levels of depth, depending on where you're at with Datadog and Kubernetes. This is not all of the workshops, but there are many that will be done in person, lots of talks. So we'll get to hear about how lots of different folks are observing their platforms, but not necessarily, what they did with Datadog, but what it is that they're growing in their tech. And actually, last little bit, Fred, like when you talk about your ClickOps and things like that, I think I see our job as making the execution and the use of the software in everyone's day-to-day life better. I remember like Kubernetes and containers were like this new and revolutionary idea, and they were really fun to experiment with. And now it's the hard work is happening. And so making this audience's day job a little bit easier every single day is kind of our goal, and I think it's your goal. And so definitely appreciate everyone joining us today. And then we've also, again, that link for the hands-on workshops. You're welcome to take those on demand outside of Dash.
Wonderful. So super exciting stuff. Really, thanks for coming in. Just the last bits about Kubefirst. We added 3 new cloud as a beta. So you can now create a cluster on DigitalOcean and on Vultr and Google Cloud. I personally didn't test Google Cloud yet, but I test Vultr and DigitalOcean, and it's working very well for beta support within Kubefirst. But try it yourself, try it at home. You don't even need to use a cloud provider to try Kubefirst and see like what type of cluster we're creating and how everything is working tied together. So you can also use Key3D, which only need you to have like Docker desktop install. And with the command line, you can create a Key3D cluster, and you're going to have the mostly like 95.9% the same experience as like a cluster on any other cloud provider. With that said, try Datadog, give it a go hopefully on a Kubefirst cluster, because now it's even easier to do so. But again, they also have like great documentation. It's really not complicated to element install the agent. Yeah, try it today, and join our Slack community. I think that's the last thing I'm going to say. If you have any question about that specific stream, if you have question about like Datadog or have issues running Datadog within your Kubernetes cluster, let us know. If you have question about Datadog, again, I'm not the expert. I feel in way better place right now, like with that live stream. Thanks, Rick. My knowledge is a lot better than it used to about Datadog. But again, we have John and Jared that are really the Datadog expert at Kubefirst, and they're going to be more than happy to help you, because we just love the product. And I was telling Rick the last time we talked, I think it was last week, just talking about the live stream, where we really love Datadog swag, and this is part of the reasons that like the next time we're gonna create our Kubefirst t-shirts, we need to print new t-shirts. The quality is gonna do a notch up, because we had like such, they're so comfortable, like your t-shirts and everything, great swag. So we just love that. So any one last word before we end that nice live stream?
No, I definitely appreciate everyone tuning in, and look forward to seeing what you all build with Datadog and Kubefirst.
Awesome. And because it's the first time on your show, you may not know, but we always end the live stream with a really bad developer dad joke. So, Rick, what's the best thing about being a Boolean?
What's that?
Even if you are wrong, you're only a bit off. I know. So bad.
We got to do more of those. They should be like in chapters. We should have,
I do that. I don't know what happened. The first live stream I joined because they were starting to do like those show once in a while before I joined, but because my job is like developer relation, doing live stream, those kind of things is part of my job. So now we do those every 2 weeks. And the first one I joined, I don't know why. I just finished with like a really bad jokes, because that was my first live stream. It was just about Kubefirst. I joined like a week and a half before. I didn't know the platform. So I was on the live stream just to say hello. And I didn't participate that much. And I was like, I need something to say. I don't know. So I just found a really bad joke. And now the second live stream, John was like, hey, Fred, what's your joke today? And now it's just part of the live stream. We need to do it. So anyway,
catalog of them, you just go right down the list.
It is. I need to say that I did most of the good jokes that I had, so I need to find more for the next live stream. But anyway, thanks everyone for joining. that was really great. Thanks, Rick, for spending all that time with us to tell us a little more about Datadog, all the high-level features that people need to, people should really use the platform. And I'm not saying that because you're here, as you said before, like it's important to add observability to your platform. So please add that tool, try it, make it happen. Alex, before last comment, thanks, fella. Appreciate your time and hard work. I could have said it before. And last question, because I'm that nice of a person. Is that released yet or still pending? It is released yet. We released the GitOps catalog in 2.2, which was released last week. So it's up there. The only thing is that, as I said before, you cannot have access to the GitOps catalog with the CLI for different reasons. So you need to create your cluster with the UI. And to do that, you can look into documentation, or the common with the CLI is that I know it's confusing because you can do Kubefirst, create, and let's say Civo, or actually Kubefirst, Civo, create, which is going to create like a new Kubernetes cluster on Civo. But you still need to use the CLI to create your cluster 0, which is going to FireHub the console application to have the installation UI. And to do that, the command is with the CLI again, Kubefirst launch up. And that's going to ask you, we need a MongoDB for different reasons. It's going to ask you if you want to in-cluster one, which is the easiest option, or if you want to use like MongoDB Atlas, where you're going to need to like be able to have that connected. So probably use the in-cluster option. And it's going to take like a minute or two, and you're going to have like the console applications is going to open in your browser. And from there, you're going to be able to create the cluster like you do with the CLI if you do Kubefirst, the name of the cluster, and create. But by creating your cluster with the UI, you're going to have access to the GitOps catalog. So I don't know if we're going to have a way to make it happen, probably in the future, within, even if you use the CLI, because right now the GitOps catalog sits in like cluster 0. So this is why you need the UI installation. At some point, I would probably assume that like the GitOps catalog will be part of your cluster management. So the cluster will create with Kubefirst. So I wanted to keep this one short. And even when we discussed last week, Rick and I were like, hey, no, I think 30 minutes is going to be good. But you know what? We had some great questions. We had some great content. So I'm not even sad or mad or whatever about the fact that we spoke for 70 minutes. I think that was great content. So on that note, I'm stopped talking. Thanks again, Rick, for joining us. I know it's a busy time of the week. Good luck with the conference. I know it's a lot of work. I've been there, done that. But it's really, we are rewarding to see all that great content that you share with people, and the excitement of the attendees and what they learn and what they can bring back to work to be even more successful. So hopefully we're going to talk to you soon. And on that note, have a good day. And for people watching us, see you in 2 weeks for the next live stream.
All right. Thanks so much.